Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is What's New in SCM, Wave 1 2021 edition. My name is Brad, and I'll be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this session through Teams live events, and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. This session is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. When you join this event, your name, email address, and/or phone number may be viewable by other session participants in the attendee list. By joining, you're agreeing to this experience. The recording will be available on the TechTalk's Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. If you have questions for the presenter or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions during the presentation today. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Nicole Gump, Senior R&D Solutions Architect. Nicole, over to you.
Thanks, Brad, and welcome everyone to the first Tech Talk in a new series that we are planning to conduct. So this first Tech Talk covers the Wave 1 2021 timeframe, which is April of 2021 through September of 2021. So we know we're a little bit late in that time frame for this first Tech Talk, but our intention going forward is to do 2 of these per year, coinciding with the Wave 1 and Wave 2 major releases in April and October. So shortly after that April and October timeframe, you can expect to see these What's New in SCM Tech Talks available to register and view the content, because we know that the release notes are very extensive. Usually there's a lot of docs articles that are updated with the major releases. So this is our attempt to help boil down a lot of that information and make it more easily digestible for you. So co-presenting with me today and helping me moderate the chat in the Q&A is my colleague, Erin Murch, a Senior R&D Solution Architect. So let's review the agenda. So we will go over kind of a high-level overview of all of the topic areas from this Wave 1 release. But then we are going to spend the bulk of the time focused on the inventory and logistics areas and the major features that were released there. And then we will have time for some Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you are thinking of questions throughout on any of the topics, please feel free to type them in the chat. Erin can respond directly during the presentation or save the questions to present to me at the end. So let's start with an overview. So the first area that we'll discuss the features that were released in Wave 1 of this year under asset management include some incremental improvements to scheduling and executing planned maintenance work. There was also a feature released to ensure that the maintenance work is performed at the right time, and that's based on taking input from sensor data. And then also we added the ability to bill for maintenance work that has been performed. So that's the high level in the asset management area. I did include inventory and logistics here, but as I mentioned, we will be focusing specifically on this area and the features that were released to help us build our resilient supply chains. So I'll skip on to the next topic area for now. In the manufacturing area, the first 2 bullet points listed here are related to our cloud scale unit offering. So the first one that mentions enabling the mission critical manufacturing processes without interruption and at scale. That's that cloud scale unit architecture. And then the second bullet point about building resilience by extending the hub with edge scale units relates to those edge devices that are hosted on-prem. And finally, in the manufacturing area, we also enhanced the production floor execution interface, and that includes an integration now to the asset management solution that we mentioned earlier. And there are a couple of more topic areas to go over at this high level. The next one is planning. So both of these bullet points relate to our planning optimization microservice. So the first one is that we introduced some MRP2 capabilities, including infinite scheduling, and then just some incremental improvements to that planning optimization microservice to look at input from our purchase requisitions and our tiered demand forecast models, which just gives the planners in your organization more flexibility to control those lead time buffers and the overall planning horizon. And then under product information management, again, just some incremental improvements here that simplify ensuring that your product master data is complete when you're creating new product masters. And then some performance enhancements around the generating of product variants for those product masters. And finally, ECM, or the engineering change management support for converting your existing standard products into engineering products so that you can use that ECM functionality. So those are the main areas for the overview. So as I said, we're going to go into our inventory and logistics focus area now. And this slide is just going to list kind of 10 features that I have pulled out to focus on in today's Tech Talks. By no means is this an exhaustive list of all of even just the inventory and logistics features that were released in Wave 1, but these are some of the major ones that we are going to focus on in the upcoming slides. So here's the list. We're going to talk about small parcel shipping, and then we will also cover the material handling equipment interface that we refer to as MHAX. We will talk about the new landed cost module. 4 and 5 are related. They are parallel wave allocation and the schedule work creation feature. Then we will talk about that cloud scale unit functionality as it relates to the warehouse execution workload. We abbreviate that as WES. We will talk about the new warehouse management mobile application interface. Then we will talk about inventory performance and archiving features that were added with this wave. And then another new module, we have rebate management. And we'll wrap up with this single click sales order confirmation feature. And we will do a demo of that feature as well. All right, so let's jump right into it. So for small parcel shipping, if you are looking in feature management to enable this feature, as you do for most of our new Dynamics 365 supply chain management features, they are enabled and disabled through the feature management workspace. So if you're looking there to enable small parcel shipping, you will look for that same name, small parcel shipping. And when you enable it, what this feature is going to do is give you the ability to integrate the transportation management module within D365 with parcel shipping carriers. So your UPS, FedEx, USPS, sorry, the postal office. And it will send container level packing information, such as the weight and the dimensions of the package, to the parcel carrier, which will then retrieve your negotiated rates with them, send you back a rate, a tracking number for the parcel, and the shipping label that can be applied. So we do have a caveat here with the small parcel shipping feature, and that is it is not a plug and play feature, meaning you cannot simply enable the feature and then start communicating with those parcel carriers. Microsoft does not maintain an integration to each individual carrier. So those have to be either developed independently for the carriers that you would like to use, or acquired from an ISV that has already developed those integrations. However, recently we have provided a demo rating engine, and you can download the DLL for that on GitHub, and that's what I'm showing a screenshot of here on the right-hand side. And because this is a common topic that we get questions about, we will actually cover this small parcel shipping feature in a separate tech talk. So it will just be focused on this feature, setting it up and going through some demos on how to use it. So if you're interested, stay tuned and look for that tech talk in the future. Okay, our next feature is the Material Handling Equipment Interface, or MHAX. So again, this feature name, if you are looking in feature management, is the same, Material Handling Equipment Interface. And when this feature is enabled, it allows you to integrate your warehouse management module in Dynamics 365 with your automated warehouse systems in your facility, such as you might have automated conveyor systems or sortation systems, and it allows those systems to process work that is generated by your warehouse management module. So you can see in the graphic on the right-hand side that we're showing the flow of the work being created in Dynamics 365 Warehouse Management, that work being added to an outbound queue. The architecture of the Material Handling Equipment Interface is run through business event triggers. So the outbound queue holds all those outbound events from the work creation, and then the material handling automated equipment can pick up those outbound events, process them, and send the updated information back to the inbound queue. As soon as it hits that inbound queue, that's another business event trigger for the interface to process that and update our work records within Dynamics 365 Warehouse Management. So we're generating the work, we're sending it to the queue. The automated system is telling us, exactly, did they complete that work? Was it short? Anything like that. And then we're updating the work record back in Dynamics 365. So I did put a note, if you are looking to use this feature, please note that you do need to put the environment into maintenance mode, because there is a license that must also be enabled, and it is under the same name as well, Material Handling Equipment Interface. So you'll want to make sure that you enable that license and then go in and enable your feature to start setting this up and using this feature. All right, and then we have a new module for our inbound transportation management processes, and that is the landed cost module. The module name is the same as the feature name, and yes, you do need to go still into feature management and enable this feature to see the module in your menu. Once you do enable that, here is what the module kind of main landing page looks like. So you can see there is a ton of new forms and some new transportation concepts that are not in the transportation management module, which deals mostly with our outbound transportation management scenarios. So this module is intended to help you track goods in transit on their way to your facility, and it gives you the option to calculate the item costs that are associated with procuring the goods and transporting the goods, and you can set up allocation rules for how those costs are calculated. And the caveat with this module is, like I said, there is some overlapping concepts between the native transportation management module and this new landed cost module, but there are also some differences, right? You can probably see right away we've got this concept of a voyage. That's not something we have in transportation management. So if you are looking to use both of these modules in conjunction or planning to in the future, then please review. We do have a pretty comprehensive docs article, and I've linked it here on using landed cost versus transportation management. And I mentioned earlier that the module is enabled through feature management, same name as the module name for landed cost. And because this is a pretty broad scope and a new module in the SCM space, we will cover it in a future Tech Talk as well, just focused on landed cost. Okay, and now we come to this feature and the following feature that I mentioned in the overview list that are related. And the first one here is our parallel wave allocation. This one has not as straightforward of a feature name, and so it is under wave parallelization for allocate wave method, if you are looking in feature management to enable this one. In previous releases, this was an optional feature. When it was introduced, you had to actually go into feature management and enable it if you wanted to use it. But I've noted here that starting with version 10.0.17, we actually made this feature mandatory because of its impact on wave processing performance. We have turned it on. And you cannot turn the feature off, but if for some reason you do not want to use this functionality, you can manually revert the settings and use the previous single threaded wave allocation if you so choose. So enabling this feature basically will go in and put these configurations in place under the wave process method for allocate wave. So this is your allocation step within the wave. And you can see this. This is a screenshot from the system of the actual task configuration of that wave process method for allocate wave. So when you click in here, what you'll see is that the system now starting in this 10.0.17 version and later, we'll go in and create a record in this task configuration for every WMS enabled warehouse in this entity. So you can see all of my warehouses listed here, and it has put a default of 8 threads per batch that it will run. You can update this. You can see that it's editable here. The wave processing batch group can be defined per warehouse if you would like to separate them. Otherwise, this setting is coming from your warehouse management module level parameters where the default wave processing batch group is specified. Okay, this will also turn on the parameter that says process waves in batch automatically, because if the waves are not processing in batch, then none of this task configuration is triggered. So that is also important. And as I mentioned, the reason that we made this feature mandatory going forward is because we have found historically that this allocate wave method is the longest running method in the wave process. So by being able to multi-thread this step, it is enhancing the overall performance of the wave process. So you may be familiar with this from previous releases, and maybe you had chosen to turn it on previously, but we have called it out here for this Wave 1 2021 release just because we have changed the behavior of the feature that it is set to be on by default. But a new feature that we did add that is related to that Wave performance is called the schedule warehouse work creation. So this one under feature management, you will find as schedule work creation. It is not on by default, at least not yet. But this is very similar to the previous feature that we discussed. When you enable this feature, what it does is when you create your Wave template and the default selected methods are saved, you typically have this create work method. And once you've enabled this feature, you can now replace it with this WHS schedule work creation Wave step method, which is a mouthful, but basically it's this new schedule work creation. And it is doing the same thing that we talked about with the allocation step, which you can see is step 3, right? That's the step above the work creation step. But it enables that parallel processing of the work creation. So after the allocation step, we find that the work creation is kind of the second longest running task within the Wave. So now that we've addressed the allocation step, we wanted to address the work creation step as well. But at this time, remember that you do have to enable this feature if you would like to use this. It is not made mandatory yet by default. I have also made a note that the feature is also dependent on an organization-wide work blocking feature being enabled, and that's because anytime we're multi-threading, we want to make sure we're not running into deadlocking issues or anything like that. So that's what that organization-wide work blocking feature prevents. And then additionally, if you are in your feature management workspace and you're typing in the schedule work creation, you may find another feature with a similar name, and it is called organization-wide schedule work creation Wave method. And what this does is automate the feature setup across all the legal entities. So similar to how we talked about in the previous Wave allocation, where we've made it mandatory now and it goes in and it sets the task configurations for all the warehouses by default. This is a similar feature that you can enable voluntarily for the schedule work creation. So just enabling the schedule work creation feature allows you to manually add it to a Wave template to replace the single threaded create work method. Or optionally, you can also enable the organization-wide option to automate that setup across all the legal entities. So what it will do is go in and automatically replace the create work with the schedule work creation method, and then set up those task configurations and the process waves in batch that we talked about similarly for the previous feature. Okay, so these are related because they're both, as I've noted here, intended to enhance the performance of our overall Wave processing time. All right, so now let's talk about our cloud scale unit offering. Again, I don't believe that that's GA'd in this Wave. But we want to talk about it here because there are a couple of features that enhanced the overall solution offering. So this one is actually an add-in for your Dynamics 365 supply chain management business application, and the add-in name is Cloud Scale Unit. You can find that in LCS. And the prerequisite for using the cloud scale unit solution would be that you have acquired the add-in and then you have deployed the hub, which is your D365 SCM back office. and also your scale unit or units that are usually geographically dispersed, and they've been deployed with the warehouse management workload. We abbreviate that again as WES. You can see that in the graphic, and we spoke earlier in the overview that we have a similar architecture for the manufacturing side, and the manufacturing workload is abbreviated as MES, MES, but we're going to focus on the warehousing one here in this slide at least. So the couple of features that were added in this wave that we want to call out are a mouthful, so bear with me. The first one is the incremental enhancements for warehouse execution capabilities with scale units. So these are our cloud-hosted scale units. So what we have added is inbound picking and loading capabilities for transfer orders. The GA version of this solution, I believe, only addressed sales orders. So now we have transfer order capability. We now have included label printing, including not just license plate labels, but wave labels as well. A cluster picking support, wave processing on the workload instead of in the back office, which is how it was GA'd. And then updates to work records such as, canceling work that was created or updating assignments, those type of updates. So that's the first feature that was in this wave one related to the cloud scale unit. And then the other one, also a mouthful, is the wave execution with edge scale units on your custom hardware. So these are your on-prem, not cloud hosted devices that you are using to connect to the hub or the back office. So this feature just has some improvements for the edge scale units that are running on your physical devices that are on your warehouse floor. So the note here is that those devices that are connected to an edge scale unit on-prem have the same capabilities as when working against a cloud hosted scale unit. So there should be, like from a user experience or functionality, no difference in those edge scale units versus the cloud scale units. All right, and let's move on to the warehouse mobile applications. So hopefully you've seen by now, this was a really big deal for us. We've released for the first time in about 4 years a new user interface to the application that goes hand in hand with the Dynamics 365 supply chain management business application. So that application is a separate download. You can go into the Windows Store and find that new application and download it, connect it to your environment. And once you have done that, there is a feature that should be enabled, and it's called the user settings, icons, and step titles for the new warehouse app. Luckily, that one's pretty self-explanatory, but basically what it does is kind of give us the support for these new icons and some of the more user-friendly step titles that we've put into the workflows for this new application. So you can see the new UI here on the right. It is more of the blue background versus our old application, which is the black background with the green text overlay. So this was really a UI redesign. It's not a functionality change by and large. So we did this for, accessibility updates, better scaling for different devices, just a more user-friendly interaction here for the warehouse app. And I did note that because it is actually a separate application, you can still go into your Windows Store and see that the old application is still available. And you can actually have both applications running connected to the same environment side by side. That's nice if you're in an implementation, you're testing, maybe you were using the old application and now the new one has been released, and you want to try it out and kind of test the differences and get some user, feedback. So you can actually run them side by side. Eventually, the old app will go away. We're, I think, already currently not, doing any support or new features for that older app. But so this will be the one that you do want to start moving toward in all of your projects going forward. But for now, they can still both be downloaded and both be run side by side. And if you want more information, if you haven't seen, kind of a full demo on the new app or downloaded it yourself, we did actually do a full tech talk just on the application update a couple of months ago. Our colleague Zach Greenboss presented this one. So I've provided the link to that tech talk in the slide deck, and you'll be able to access this once the recording is posted on the Community Dynamics page. All right, so inventory, performance, and archiving. So our feature name here, if you're looking in feature management, is Inventory Transactions Archive. And this feature allows you to move your old inventory transactions to a separate archive with the intention of, once those are archived, your overall system performance is going to improve because your transaction logs have been condensed. But it still preserves your ability to view the archived transactions, and you can see from the screenshot on the right what that new inventory transactions archive screen looks like once you've enabled this feature. So there are some requirements or prerequisites for being able to actually run this archiving periodic task. And the conditions that must be met are that the ledger period must be closed for the inventory transactions you're trying to archive. The inventory closing must be run on or after the to-period date of the archive. The period must be at least 1 year before the from period of the archive, and then there must not be any existing inventory recalculations running. Okay, so if all of those conditions are met, then when you run this inventory transactions archive, the transactions will be archived. You will be able to view them here. You can see that there's a drop down. We can maybe view this in the environment if there's interest or questions as well. But if there are active kind of archiving going on, you will see it in this form. You can pause and resume the archiving activity. And you can see also that you have the ability to reverse an archive transaction if something was maybe archived too soon or not according to your business requirements. You can reverse it. The other drop down here is to see the previous transactions that have already been archived and the execution of the archiving job has been completed. So you still have that visibility to those transactions. They're not just being deleted. So for auditing or compliance purposes, they can still be retrieved and viewed. Okay, but this is really the intention is to speed up the performance of the system by archiving those older inventory transactions. All right, and then that brings us to another new module that we have in this Wave 1 release, and it is Rebate Management. So again, this one also has to be enabled in feature management, and it is under the same name as the module. So when you enable this one, again, you can see in the screenshot on the right, the overview page of what the rebate management module looks like. So this module is actually an updating offering of the old rebates and royalty processing features that we had in Dynamics SCM. So it just allows you to create your contracts and agreements between you and your customers and vendors. so that you can calculate, rebates and royalties and just track them all in a central location where they can be reviewed and then processed by the appropriate users. So a more streamlined rebate management offering. And as I mentioned, this has to be enabled in feature management for you to be able to see the rebate management module show up in your list in Dynamics. And then the final feature that we're going to cover is a more minor feature, but one that I think is really impactful and might kind of get lost in a lot of the bigger, flashier features in this release, such as our new modules and our new warehouse mobile application. So this one is fairly simple and straightforward. It's our single-click sales order confirmation. The feature name is the same in feature management. When you enable it, it gives you a new action on the sales order list page and also on the sales order detail page that allows you to, you can see it's called confirm now your sales order, and you do not have to go through kind of the subform or the pop-up page, and it uses the settings from the most recent confirmation posting, not including any batch posting that you've done of sales order confirmations. So this one, we're actually going to hop into my demo environment to show you this directly. So this is my Dynamics 365 environment. I'm just going to go into my all sales order page. I'm just going to pick one from my list that I can see is open. And if I look, I can see that there is not a sales order confirmation posted for this order yet. And I do have this single-click sales order confirmation feature enabled in my environment. So I now have this action called confirm now. You can see that I still have the older standard options of confirmation and pro forma confirmation that will bring up the subform, but this is similar to our, what we call little confirm on the purchase order side, and we now have it on the sales order side. I'm going to open this particular sales order just to show you that it is also on our details page. So under the cell tab, again, next to the standard confirm sales order, we now have the action to confirm now. And you can see that the help text is also reminding you that it's going to confirm the sales order immediately using your last confirmation settings, not including any batch processing you've done. So basically we can just hit that. It's going to process here right in the foreground. It's not going to put it into a batch job. And you'll see that we've got a operation complete. And now, if I go back, let me refresh that. We have a confirmation of this sales order. So what you can do also is go back in once you've done the confirm now and go to the journal, and you can actually still print it if you would need to, but I assume if you're doing the confirm now that you might not be using this option, you wouldn't need to do a print. The other thing I wanted to point out was you could do a multi-select in here and still have the option enabled to do confirm now. So that kind of speeds up that manual confirmation process if you're using this feature. Okay, and that is a short and sweet demo of our single-click sales order confirmation. So again, a pretty straightforward, but also a pretty useful feature that was released in this Wave 1 timeline. All right, so I am going to pause there. That's all of the features we wanted to cover in today's Tech Talk. So Aaron, was there anything that came up in the Q&A?
Yeah, I got a few questions here that I was hoping maybe you could address.
Sure.
All right, so I'll start with I guess the oldest first. So if you work backwards through your slide deck. So there's a question related to in your first slides when you're talking about high level enhancements under the planning. You mentioned infinite scheduling. Can you maybe just clarify, were you referencing, is there new finite scheduling capabilities, or were you just referencing the already available infinite scheduling available under the planning optimization service?
Sure, let me go back to that slide and let me back up here. I think it is just referencing the standard MRP2 so that, your capabilities that were available when you're running MRP in Dynamics, it's essentially saying there's feature parity there now in the planning optimization microservice. So I don't think this is the finite scheduling, if hopefully that helps clarify.
Okay. Great, thanks. Next question was related around the small package shipping, or the SPS. Again, I don't know if we want to get this covered during our in-depth tech talk on the topic or not, but there's a question around how you actually go about copying those DLLs over. You had mentioned some DLLs as part of this process. There's a question how specifically that goes about working in tier 2+ environments and where RDP access is not available.
Okay. Yes, I would say let's probably table that for the in-depth talk we're going to do. You would be able to download the DLLs from GitHub and save them to your machine, but we can talk about kind of that, we'll call it end-to-end kind of configuration process for SPS, and we'll do some demos in the separate tech talk that we're going to do.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nicole. Next question was related around geo availability of the cloud scale units related to the West. Do we list out, do we know, are all Azure data regions available for West cloud scale units, or are we maintaining a list of supported regions? Do you know?
Actually, I don't, I'm not 100% certain offhand, but that's something we can certainly check on if that's something that the product group is maintaining as far as geo availability. So I don't want to say for certain yes or no, but we can certainly find out from the product team.
Okay, yeah, and just so you're aware, I did a quick search on the docs articles available right now on the feature. I didn't see anything officially listed, but we can certainly follow up and with the rest of the folks, and maybe it's something that we could take back to the docs site as well, just to make sure that we clarify if it's available in all or limited regions.
Yeah, because we may have that noted somewhere internally, but that's a good point that we want to get it out on the docs article if we are actually maintaining that.
All right. Another question somewhat related to this, and that is related to the MHAX feature. Does that also work in a somewhat related kind of offline fashion with the West functionality, or does MHAX require a constant connection to like the main, F&O instance at all times for the MHAX functionality to work? Just in terms of if a production site or a warehouse site were to go down or lose internet connection to the main Azure, and they have, let's say, an edge scale unit, would MHAX still work, or would that go offline?
So it's not the same architecture. I will say it that way, where with the cloud and edge or cloud scale units, when the back office goes offline, the whole point of that architecture and having the workloads in a scale unit is that you do have that offline capability where you continue to perform your warehouse operations or perform your manufacturing operations on the production floor while your back office is offline. And then essentially you can just continue when the back office comes back up. Maybe there was planned maintenance and you're in a 24/7 mode. But when that back office comes back up, everything is going to sync from the workload that you've continued to work on back to the back office to update it. Now for material handling equipment interface, it's not really on that same architecture. So I guess a couple of ways to say that is MHAX is not supported on the West cloud workload, but also the whole architecture is just different, right? I wouldn't think of like your back office as a hub and then the automated material handling equipment as a scale unit or a workload. As I said, this feature and this architecture is really just driven off of business event triggers. So there's like an inbound and an outbound queue. So I guess that's not to say that, you know, these events couldn't potentially, you know, be picked up by the automated system. And then if your back office goes offline and, you know, this can't communicate to the back to the inbound queue, that essentially what I would assume is going to happen, right, is that technically your equipment could continue to process whatever it has already pulled from the outbound queue. It couldn't receive any new signals, but it also couldn't push anything back to the inbound queue until the back office was back online. But so kind of whatever has already been pulled could be executed and then would be queued up to kind of be pushed back into the back office. But it is not the same architecture as the cloud scale unit. Hopefully that clarifies.
Yeah, it does for me. So
okay.
So hopefully
good.
for others on the call as well. Next, we have a few questions around the inventory archiving and kind of where the data goes and what impacts it has on prod database.
Sure.
So can you maybe just address, like, so when the archive is run, you know, what ends up happening with those transactions and what are the impacts on production databases, and is that information, how is that information available after it's archived?
Yeah, so maybe for this one, maybe let's look at this archive in the actual system, and let me see if I close that or if I can pull that back up really quickly here. Because that may help us direct the discussion. But basically, as we talked about, you know, on the slide, if you run this task, and I'm going to show you exactly how to get there once we pull our environment back up, and the transactions are archived, they will be viewable from this inventory transactions archive page, right? So they are written to, you know, are saved to this view, excuse me. But as far as the impact on like the production database or the database size or performance, it's going to be totally dependent, right, on, you know, how many transactions you archived, you know, kind of was that, you know, kind of percentage wise of your overall inventory transactions, what's the impact? Because if you're only archiving, you know, 5 transactions out of 5 million, that's not going to be very much of an impact, right? But if you can archive 500,000 inventory transactions out of 5 million, that's going to be a little bit larger impact, right, on reducing that overall production database size. So let me pull up this environment and we'll just go to where this is at. And maybe that helps answer some questions as well. So once you've enabled the inventory transactions archive feature, you should be able to see it in inventory management. And under our periodic tasks, we've got cleanup, and then we've got inventory transactions archive here at the very end. So if we open that, you will see the screenshot, and I don't have anything active, obviously running, but you can switch the view, like I mentioned previously, to all. I haven't actually run this in my demo environment. It doesn't have enough transactions or old enough transactions to really archive. Well, we could try it, but basically to kick off this periodic task, you click that inventory transactions archive in the header of the form, and then you're able to fill in the parameters for your ledger periods, and then you can say that you're going to run this in the background. Actually, this is checked by default to run in the background. And when you say OK to submit that job, you're going to see kind of the progress in this active default view of the archive. So you can see them here, but when you switch to all, you should essentially be able to see everything that's, you know, not active, but that is already completed processing. Does that help to clarify how this process works? And I don't believe outside of this form that there is any other view of the archive transactions from a UI perspective.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I think that's all I have for during the session. I think we have a few more questions, but we'll just try to address those kind of offline after the session. So I think that's all I have for you right now. So thank you, Nicole.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. And let's switch back to the end of our PowerPoint here. All right, so if you do have other kind of more specific questions, certainly feel free to reach out. My contact information is here. And otherwise, thanks for joining today. And I am going to kick it back to Aaron to close us out. Aaron Hamilton, are you there to close us out?
Yep, sorry about that. Just had a issue with my headset, but I am here. I am posting a link to a short survey in the Q&A panel. We would love to get your feedback on today's session, and we'd like to hear what you would like to see in future events. We thank you in advance for your participation in taking that survey for us. As a reminder, the recording of today's session will be available on the TechTalks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. I'd like to extend a big thank you to Nicole and Aaron today, and of course to our audience for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you may be.